Susan, we can't hear you.
Hi, everybody.
Right, good afternoon, trustees. You're live. You're being recorded. You're good to go.
Okay, welcome everybody to the regular meeting of the East Hampton Town Trustees for August 14th, 2023. I'd like to open with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. Can you do roll call, please?
Certainly. John Aldred.
Here.
Francis Bob.
Here.
David Cataletto.
Here.
Ben Dollinger. Tim Garneau.
Here.
Jim Grimes. Mike Martinson. Susie McGraw-Keeber.
Here, and I'd just like to add, I did speak to Jim Grimes, and he said he would be joining us this evening on Zoom.
Ben's here.
And Bill Taylor.
Here.
Great.
So Ben's walking in.
Thank you.
So now we can vote.
Just a reminder on trustee policy regarding live meetings versus video meetings. Trustees do need to have a quorum present to make any decisions, and Ben's here, so we are looking good with the trustee quorum here live today.
And Jim's here too now.
Okay. All right, we'll start off with public comment. We have Susan Noble, owner of 100 Shore Road, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-85-1-27.1, with a request to renew her burlap sandbag permit to protect her home from storm erosion. Susan? Sure.
Hi. If you have questions for me, I've done this every year for a long time.
Yeah, this is the same project we've approved for
Every time.
20 years.
Yeah, 25, I
Doesn't
think.
seem to harm anything. It's very minor in scale, but it does provide a lot of protection for your home.
But you also have to keep
I always
in
bring
mind.
my little sandbag. I only use these tiny sandbags, and they decompose. They're not treated with anything. As a matter of fact, Dayton Bag Company sent me ones that were treated. I sent them back because I wanted the untreated ones. I don't want to hurt the earth in any way or the water.
Stops the little plastic bits from going around.
A lot of people use the plastic ones, but I don't use any plastic at all in my life. I don't believe in it.
Good for you.
So I do this and I buy beach sand, which is the highest grade sand, so that when this decomposes, it just kind of goes right back into the earth.
Now, the location of your house is in Lazy Point.
Yes,
It's just inside the East Channel.
yes.
What's happening
West
is
Channel.
West Channel. I'm sorry.
That's the West Channel.
Right, and it's actually next to the launching ramp,
It's
nearby the launching
two
ramp.
houses from the launching ramp.
And the ramp is causing eddying, which has taken away the land from your property.
Well, when I bought the house just about 50 years ago, I lived there full-time year-round for most of that time. But when I bought that, I had about 150 feet of beach grass and dune in front of my house. And when they decided to dredge that channel next to my house instead of the East Channel, it cut all, I lost all of that, all the beach in front of the house, and it just eroded right in.
Right.
And
We have pictures of the house 30 years ago, Susan.
Oh, not tonight, we don't.
No, not tonight, but yeah.
I sent pictures to the trustees so they could see what it was like, because I know a lot of people probably weren't familiar with it way back when. But it's just that I have to protect the house from the channel. The channel, when they cut the channel, they came right in, stopped at a right angle and cut it over. And water just, as you know, doesn't take any brains to know water doesn't come and stop and then go in the other direction. It just kept scouring and scouring out. The good news is that my sandbags have not affected any property to the west of me at all. As a matter of fact, I was delighted to notice, I've been keeping my eye on it. They've developed a nice little dune in front of the two houses to the west of me and lots of beach grass there. So the sandbags haven't hurt that in any way. All it does is protect me from any storm damage. And as I mentioned before, when they cut the end of Hicks Island off, they took another 50 feet off. That opened me up even more. It also clogged up their dredge, and they were off duty for a while because it was all heavy duty rock under there. So,
Susan, that's great. Hey, if I could, this is a project that we've approved in the past. This is no different than what we've approved before. If it doesn't offend anybody, I'd like to make a motion, we approve this.
I'd like to
I'll
second it.
second it.
yay.
All in favor?
Oh, thank you so much.
Okay,
It's such a pleasure having you as trustees. It has not always been easy for me.
This is a project the board's very familiar with. It's
Well-
not we did all the research years ago.
Years ago, I know, every year for 25 years. But thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's also a lot for you to maintain it every year.
It's a lot for me to maintain it.
It's a big
It is.
responsibility.
So what I usually do is I put about half of the sandbags out that I have. And then if a storm is coming, after I get my permit, if the storm is coming, then I get somebody to come down and throw the rest in just to protect it. But
Whatever you've been doing, it seems to be working.
it's working, yep. Thank you so much.
Sure, thank you, Susan.
Thank you for being
See you,
so
Susan.
reasonable. Nice to see you.
I'll see you soon.
Yes, please. Anybody's welcome to stop down to my house anytime.
Okay,
Wanna
that'd be
look
great.
things over.
Beautiful spot. Yeah.
It is. You'll see a bunch of my grandchildren on their kayaks and boards and everything else. raising
Time for
their-
some oysters, David.
all right.
Sounds good.
Next up is Jim Walker from Inner Science on behalf of Ginny Schmidt, owner of 235 Kings Point Road, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-24-1-32. Application for bluff restoration.
Yeah, I thought Jenny was going to be here, so if she comes in during the presentation, she's a retired school teacher. This is next to David Wagner's house. David Wagner recently got a permit and he put sand down. He did not put the bio logs that ZBA gave him approval for. So what we're trying to do here is put sand on the beach. It's a cobble beach. It's eroded fairly extensively, 3 or 4 feet, like this much. It's immediately next door to the community right away down to the beach. And going south from Ginny's house, there is no erosion because the properties are not high up, they are low. So what we're trying to do is restore the bluff at Ginny Schmidt's, and it's going to match David Wagner's. What we try to do is to put 3 biologs, 3 20-inch biologs, 2 and then 1 on top, and we spike it to the ground with 3-inch by 8-foot cedar stakes, and then we tie it. And it's tied with core fabric cord. And the reason why we do that is to provide a breakwater at the toe. The biologs will fail and the sand will get washed out, and it's something that's going to require maintenance. But these 2 people are retired. They have limited funds. Next door at David Wagner's property, the zoning board of appeals denied him rocks. They denied him a bulkhead. He sued the town and he lost, and he decided to just put sand there. So we're matching the sand. The only difference is we're putting the biologs in that he got approval for as well. And the idea again is to provide toe protection.
Is his property, the neighbor's property, the one that's next to the bulkhead?
Yes. Yeah, he's got some end-around erosion that Ginny Schmidt really doesn't. And Ginny Schmidt's property drops down in elevation at the northernmost part of it, that's a little steeper, a little taller. At the southern part of it, it's almost down to grade. So what we intend to do is to put the biologs at the 2 or 3 foot elevation, wrap them around to her property, put sand behind it, plant the beach grass and bayberry.
Yeah, so I met with Jim down at the property. We showed me the project, and it definitely needs it. It's creeping up on the property and the lawn. So I am for it, and we should check back in a year and see how those biologs are doing, and if they're working or if you're replacing them.
We have experience with that, David. As I mentioned on the site, we have been at bluff restorations that failed. The biologs washed out into the water. Basically, all you do is retrieve them, put it back in place, and spike them to the ground again. It's inevitable that the biologs will get washed out a little bit and the sand will get washed out. And what we tell clients what to do is to replace the sand and plant beach grass each April. And that's it.
Jim, do you think it would be beneficial down here to do some snow fencing at the base of the bluff and capture some of that windblown sand?
David Wagner has sand fence next door, and yeah, it doesn't. There's not a long stretch of the beach to put snow fence in, so you can't have a double diamond, but a simple.
Simple zigzag there.
Snow fence with a zigzag to match, again, David Wagner's zigzag snow fence is probably a good idea. If you put it straight across, it will fall down like this.
Yeah. Hey, Jim, what's your status on Town of East Hampton Natural Resource in DC? Do you have those permits?
As I mentioned to David during the site inspection, Brian Frank promised an administrative permit, no hearing. And since then, has been on vacation, but we expect that he's back and that we'll get a permit relatively soon. DEC less responsive, but I don't expect that we'll have any problems with the DEC as well.
So the town's happy. I think we should be happy too then, right?
Town met me out, just like David met me out on the property. Brian Frank and his new assistant met me on the property, and we walked the beach, and he told us what to do, and I told him what we intended, and he agreed that it would be administrative.
All right. Does somebody want to make a motion to approve this conditional on procuring the other 2 permits?
I'll make a motion to do just that. I'll make a motion.
Second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Thanks, Susan.
Aye.
Aye.
One opposed?
No. Hey, Jim, you want to stay up here?
I'll be right back.
All right.
I have to prepare a little bit.
Yeah, all right. Give you a minute.
You guys want to see the plans?
This is.
Yeah, I mean, I have them all right here, but that's probably
I have
easier
an
for everybody
easel.
to see.
I'll leave it right here.
This is Georgia Close.
Yeah, 104 Georgia Good Close.
Now, Jim Walker for 104 Georgia Close Road. This property used to be owned by Robert Niederlander. I came to the board and I got a common reed management permit approximately 12 years ago. We did the project. Susan DeClava dug the
Some pictures, guys. Like current.
common reed out, and the bottom line was the native plants recovered quite well, and then Robert Niederlander sold the property for $12 million. More or less, that's the story. What we're here in front of the board for now is the new property owner was in there cleaning up the shoreline and got cited. As a result, we are at the zoning board in the village of East Hampton, and we're in front of New York State DEC, both of which have issued permits. And what we're asking for here is common reed management. Common reed management with supplemental plantings, and it's part of the overall redevelopment of Robert Niederlander's old property. There's other stuff there. There's a brand new IAOWTS sanitary system. The size of the tennis court has to be reduced a little bit. Some more native plantings added. But more or less, this is a common reed management project. We do have a letter into Billy Hayjack and Pam Bennett at the village confirming that the work can be done this fall. So hypothetically, if this board approves the project, that we can do the work. But more importantly, to ask for the village to allow us to have a goose fence in front of the plantings and behind the plantings so that the deer and the geese don't eat the brand new wetlands plants. We learned that the hard way. The first
We
time,
used that method on another project in that area, right?
1923 Chauncey Close. That's a spectacular project. This is a nice project, but it's a lot smaller.
And the fencing work?
It works to an extent. You can't keep deer and geese out of everything. The idea is to keep most of it intact.
You want to get something that'll live.
First time we did this was in Burnett's Creek in Wecox Bay, and the geese and the ducks ate everything. What they couldn't eat, they walked around in circles and pulled it out of the ground.
Just love it.
So we learned the hard way.
Jim, you said you have these permits already? Okay.
We have DEC and ZBA is done. So we're asking for the trustees to give us a permit and we'll get to work.
And then the village permit's only 6 months, right? So you want to save that for last?
That part, I've already contacted Billy Hayjack and Pam Bennett to make sure that we keep current with the village approval. It's similar. Other projects where we do common reed management, the village wants to know how compliance is being handled. And we routinely send an email, maybe get them out to take a visit.
Okay.
That's what happens.
Dave and I went and visited this property with Jim Grimes in early spring. And looks like a good project. The property definitely needs some TLC for sure. And I think I don't see any reason why we can't vote on this unless you guys need some more time to review everything.
Yeah, can we make a motion? I'll make a motion to approve.
Sure, I'll second.
Okay, hey guys, before we vote, I got to recuse myself. I'm involved in this project.
Got it.
Okay.
All right, I'll make a motion
Favor?
to approve.
Anyone opposed?
Those are Jim's plans drawn by Neve. And I have to say, for what it's worth, those are really nice plans.
Yeah.
And it's nice to see that that much wetlands vegetation will be planted back on a shoreline that I started working on 12 or 13 years ago.
Yeah.
It's a good,
Irrigate the wetland buffer area.
and I have temporary irrigation, but that's handled by uprights that spray water that way. If the materials go in this fall, temporary irrigation is not really needed very much. However, the likelihood is common reed management will happen first, and then contractor will decide when it's safe to plant native plants back. And the important part with temporary irrigation is July and August.
Yeah.
And we're almost past August. My son's going back to college.
The way the weather's been going, you'll be throwing June in there pretty soon, right?
You said that to make the tennis court smaller. Is that a big project?
No.
No.
No, they're cutting it back and planting around it so that they meet New York State DEC coverage. For what it's worth, New York State DEC coverage by impervious surfaces is 20%. The old property owner had 22 something or another. It's on the survey coverage. I was given some resistance at the state, and I talked the property owner into changing it to 20%. It's probably painless. I don't play tennis. I don't really know if it's a good or bad thing for tennis. It's a good thing for plants. More plants get placed there.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Nice truck you got.
I'm going home to watch the Yankee game.
All right.
No, I wouldn't do that. Sorry.
You know, I would get some sympathy there.
The previous owner, was he the owner of the Yankees?
Part owner, the best part about Robert Eaglegander is when you were done with a meeting, he would come out with some 1998 World Series gear and he'd give you something. He was really a lot of fun to work for.
Yeah, I bet.
Cheap as the day is long. Fun to work for otherwise.
Sure. Thanks. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so I think we have a little issue at the moment. Did Arlene speak to you?
She said she had to get something and
Yeah, Arlene left the building. I think she needs a password, believe it or not. And we can't screen share until.
I have it on my computer. I don't know.
It's got to get
But we
into the
need to get it
system.
into the system.
Does LTV happen to?
I'm sorry?
That would apply to Lionhead's presentation too.
Well, I don't know. Wouldn't they?
Wouldn't LTV have the password?
I don't know.
LTV,
Matt?
if you're there, could
Yeah,
you
what
text?
are you guys looking for to get someone in on the Zoom?
We have a laptop in the room that needs to screen share.
Okay.
They want to screen share with the main panel.
And they have the meeting ID.
I think they need the
You didn't
password
get
to
the email for the.
Okay. It's
Let me have you, excuse, I'm sorry, go ahead.
829-027.
Here we go.
I believe that I have that email, Marianne, with your attachments.
Right, and just, I know people are nervous that I was gonna
Yeah, we're not going
have
to do
an
87.
89 slide presentation, which isn't true. I just didn't know how to like cut it down, so I just put the slides I wanted to present and the first 10, but we're just gonna skip that
Is it the first 10 in the?
in the deck, right?
Well, then Susan can share.
Marianne, let me see if I have it. All right, I'll go through and see if I have it for you.
But you can also, do you have everything I sent, I CC'd you. So
Yes,
you have
that's
the
why I'm going into my email right now.
Let's just do the PowerPoint. We'll just cut to the chase. What I was going to do is I was going to show you the things that were particular to East Hampton from the study we did with Gobler. But nothing new and earth shaking. We'll just go to the PowerPoint, which kind of like takes it from here.
Let me see. I have, Marianne, I have Sag Harbor Talk. You said it's a short presentation for this evening. Let me open this up and see. It's an Adobe attachment. I also have a Word document.
It's actually, we'll open it up, but I think
Okay.
what I'm looking at is a PowerPoint.
All right, let me see what I have. I have Dr. Gobler's report, assessment of water quality in marine waters surrounding Sag Harbor Village, but I think that's quite long, correct?
Well,
Or is that what you wanted to show?
both of them start off with the picture of Gobler's report. But
Okay.
one of them is a PowerPoint, not. So I have it here. I could like email it to you again now, but
Let me try to share my screen and you tell me if this would be the right thing, okay? All right, so.
But I sent these to.
Is that correct?
It's not coming up.
No,
This is not correct.
On that
Nope.
side.
there's a
Okay,
shorter, sweeter, simpler one. It's the PowerPoint that I sent her a couple hours after that one.
okay, so let me look. Let me go back into my mail. Okay, presentation, PowerPoint.
Yeah, let's
All
try
right,
that.
hold on, I'm opening it now.
Okay,
And then as we come to the pictures, you'll just tell me when to move on to the next picture.
that would be perfect. Uh-huh.
Hold on, I have to share my screen again. So bear with me 1 second. Okay,
It
is that correct?
Well, there's a typo in it, but it's the right presentation, yes.
Okay.
Don't get too technical.
You're right. It's not August 4th. It's August 14th.
Okay, so just tell me when you want me to go to the next slide.
Okay, let's have the next one. Okay. So what has all this testing gotten us, right? Why do we keep doing this? This is now the 5th year. And the thing is that we've been able to leverage it into a lot of grants. Grants for green and gray infrastructure that will impact our water quality. We've gotten about 1.5 million in grants for green infrastructure in both East Hampton and Southampton from the CPS, from Suffolk County, and from the EPA through the Peconic Estuary Partnership. We have a $66,000 New York State grant for the study of Havens Beach watershed, which will be everything north of Route 114. We're just looking right now for the matching funds that we need to complement that. Then what we want to do is once we have that system down, then we'll move through the village, replicating that study of green and gray infrastructure. And then we've gotten over $4 million in various grants over multiple years for the expansion of the sewer service area. Next slide.
It's gray infrastructure.
That's your storm drains, your catchment, your leaching, whatever, all that. Okay, so this is our sewer service, master sewer plan. This is the two areas, if you can see on L. K.
L is right here.
Right, L is
My.
the Hampton portion of the envisioned expansion. And you go off, how did they do that? Just roll the dice? This is actually, if you can see this, the next slide, Susan, is they use these various different characteristics. So one is the on-site wastewater treatment effluent that they could estimate the density of the nitrogen, the high groundwater, because some of our residences are practically sitting in groundwater. People, high tide, can't flush their toilets, certainly can't do the laundry. The percent of the non-vacant parcel area in those particular different areas, and the number of buildings. So these all got rated on those different characteristics. And then you can see that L and K were the two of the highest there in terms of how these were all, I don't know if you can see, you probably can, but you can't see it. L is Southampton.
Okay, I'll go back to the map, yes?
L is East Hampton. Now go back to the chart that we had a moment ago. Yes, so here's L, right there, came out 2.3, and K, which is in Southampton, came in at 3. But those are the two that are going to be the first focus of expanding the sewer service area. And then the next slide, Susan, it's kind of another picture of the same thing. And then this is what they say. When we go to get grants, this is Aiden Korish is our trustee who manages our grant process. And he says every grant application gets this report attached to it. And it carries a lot of weight. Gobler carries a lot of weight. You guys have been participating for longer than we have. This is our 5th year, but every grant application has a Gobler Studies attached, and that working with him carries a lot of weight. And then in July, the 5-year Peconic Estuary Partnership, their accreditation meeting with the National Estuary Program and the EPA, we were like called out as like a champion for water quality. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that we've been studying this and working on this for a number of years. And then this year's plan for the East Hampton portion, Windmill Beach, it's not exactly part of East Hampton, but it's not Southampton either. It's New York State waters, because Southampton doesn't pick up until you get west of the bridge. And this is kind of like right there in the middle. I don't really think it's East Hampton, but everybody uses Windmill Beach. I mean, all the little kids down there, parents bring their kids there because they think it's safe and it's protected and it's lousy with bacteria. So we're going to be continuing to look at that, and to the point where we got Dee Yardley, our DPW guy, to open up some of these manholes so that we go and test. There's one storm drain that comes all the way from the library, all the way through Main Street, and then it dumps out like 10 feet beyond the shore at Windmill Beach. So we're doing two things. We're checking that, and we're also checking where the boats are, the transient dock there. So we're really trying to nail why that is such a polluted area. And then in Havens Beach, this was part of what I didn't have. Next slide, Susan. I'm sorry. And next slide.
Next slide. There you go.
Yes, please. So, and then at Havens Beach, one of the things that we found surprising is we've always focused on the sump, on the ditch there, that really comes in, brings all this polluted water from Bay Street. It's not the dog park, it's Bay Street. It's all the areas to the south that are coming down into that sump. But one of the things we did last year that was really a surprise is we went over to the west where there's the bathing beach, where there's the lifeguard station, and we found that was even more polluted. So where's that coming from? So we're trying to find out where that's coming from. And we don't think it's a comfort station because the pathogens just don't travel that far. So that's one of the things that we're doing this year. And then the other thing is that we're going to continue looking at the sump, and we're going to be monitoring it for blue-green algae. A lot of algae in there. Last year, no blue-green algae. Next slide, Susan.
The sump itself.
Huh?
The sump itself.
Yeah. Yeah. Next slide. Why am I not getting the next slide? Here we go. So this is the cost. So it's costing us about $16,000 for these various sites, bi-weekly testing. And then we're going to take the ones that like are the raunchiest, and we'll do microbial source tracking on those. Costs us $250 per sample. So we're going to need somewhere around $30,000, a little less probably. And what I'm requesting from you all is, this is the history. I don't know if you can read it, but 2018, you gave us 5,000, 19, 5,250, 2020, 3,000, last 2021, 2,500. Last year, you gave us 2,500, and I would ask you for $2,500 this year. And yes, question?
Hey guys, we've supported this initiative since I've been on the board. I'd like to make a motion that we contribute the $2,500 to match the numbers that we've given in the past here. And Susan, Mary Ann, you're doing a great job.
I will second that motion, Mary Ann, as well. Susan here.
Thank you.
Mary Ann, thank you.
Okay, I know you want me. Thank you. Here's like something that I'm going to come back and ask you for somewhere down the line. I'm grateful for the 2,500.
We have to vote on this.
Oh, sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone?
So I mentioned that we have this study where we got money from New York State. As you may know, that they end up asking for matching funds. So we need about $20,000, not asking that for you particularly, but it's just something that's out there. That we need some ideas of where we can get the 20,000 to match the 66 that New York State's giving us. And then the other thing that we're thinking about is, should we just pick that sewage treatment plant up and move it off the waterfront? Why is it sitting there on the waterfront, right? So
Yeah, I agree. That's right in the middle of it all.
yeah, it's right in the middle of it. And
between the two yacht clubs, the water there is always like chocolate milk. You know, I'm there all the time. My boat's there. And that seems to be, I would think that'd be the first major source. I'm sure you're all over that though.
Well, the sewage treatment plant really shows pretty good results. especially with nitrogen, especially with nitrogen. But is that a good use of that waterfront, or should we move it somewhere else?
Do you have another location?
Well, what Cameron Engineering, we asked them how much it would cost to do a feasibility study to identify possible locations. Said $60,000, $70,000. I have somebody who will give us $35,000. So now I'm looking, it will match whatever I come up with. So I would like to at some point come back to you. I know at some point you get this money from Deep Wind or whatever it is, Orston, that some of that money might be available, and maybe this would be a good to contribute into that fund.
We have a copy of the proposal that you're sending out for grant funds.
For what? For?
I'm not sure. I'm a little confused. You got a lot of
stuff.
parts here.
Okay, we could send you, so the waterfront or the watershed study, which is like Route 114 and then everything to Havens Beach, I can send you that. I don't have a grant. We have like the master sewer plan that Cameron did. And one of the things that they talk about at the end is the possibility of moving it. And the first step in moving it is to do a feasibility study, which would identify locations with the various pros and cons. One, of course, would be up there by the golf course and follow the pattern that Riverhead has done, which is they take the clean effluent and they irrigate the golf course, right? Which does the other thing, it returns the water to the groundwater as opposed to throwing it in the bay. That's a plus.
What's the ownership status of the property now, the waterfront property that the plant is on?
I have no idea. I assume it's Sag Harbor Village. I mean, we paid for the lights.
If it was replaced, who would own the property?
Well, that depends what we would do with it. Could we, like, at one point, New York State said, well, we could think about a swap, you know, but there would be terms and conditions on that, because there was 3 or 4 years ago, there was a conversation about whether or not New York State would give us a carve out up there by the golf course, because they own a big plot of land there. And it was like kind of a tell me more kind of conversation that we haven't revisited.
I mean, the state owns the property that the waterfront, that the sewage treatment plant's on now?
No, the village does.
The village does.
The village.
Okay, so you could decide, you would basically be able to say, we're gonna put a park here or.
Negotiate, yeah, maybe there could be some public-private, some kind of enterprise there. The other possibility would be to move it to the airport, in which case, thinking really far ahead, that could end up sewering Rainscott, Georgica, which are really problem areas, right? So one is like the golf course is 2 miles, the airport's 4 miles. It's an undertaking, but we need to have like engineers really looking at this and sussing it out. So.
The golf course is really far from the village.
2.1 miles.
That's it? Okay,
Yeah.
still, that's a big, long way.
It's a long way.
It's uphill quite a bit too.
And it's uphill.
Is that sewage plant?
Well, it's uphill to my house, which is like, you know, right around the school and the funeral home, and then it's pretty much downhill.
Is that sewage plant in East Hampton District or South
East Hampton?
Is-
Yeah. Mhm.
But that sewage plant is working pretty well, right?
It does. That's part of the other presentation. Nitrogen is like minimal, way below any kind of, you know, standards. It's like.
Pumping out clean water too, or cleanish water?
Yeah, I mean, you look at it, it looks like water.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not offering to drink it, but supposedly it would be just fine.
Yeah.
So what drove the recommendation to abandon it and move it somewhere else?
Well, it's not a recommendation, it's just our curiosity, because it's prime area, you know, and one of the things that happens is that when they've got these vats, there are certain odorific characteristics that sort of spread around. People complain about that, and it just seems that we could have a better use of the property if there's a feasible way of moving the sewage treatment plant up the hill. Anyway.
So the feasibility study itself, which just talks about whether to move it, where to move it, the possibilities.
What the cost would be.
It's a $60,000 study.
Yeah, and somebody said that whatever the partnership said they would match whatever I could.
You'd have to consider what it would do to the affecting customers and everything too, right?
With what?
The affecting users, you know, it's located, the plant's probably located lower than most of the
You'd
the
have, in other
people.
words, you'd have to pump most of the effluent
You would have to
uphill to a
pump.
new plant.
There would be a pump,
2 miles.
totally, right. There might be some like small, whatever, pump station there, but then the actual distillation and curing of the effluent would be.
It sounds like there are a lot of issues to look into.
There are.
Did
Yeah,
anybody,
there's like $60,000 worth of issues to look into.
They say how long the study takes about once they get started? It's like a year or 2 years?
Well, once we have the money, we tell them to go, I think, no. The feasibility study is like 4 to 6 months.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's not that long.
did anybody ballpark the cost of a new plant?
Millions. 10, $20 million, a lot of money. Right. But there's money right now with the infrastructure plant, you know, and stuff like that. There's probably, you know, in the next foreseeable future, there's probably more opportunities for raising that money than there are going to be down the line.
Is
So
there
I
an
think-
issue, like, is that Sag Harbor outgrown the size of that plant too? Is there a need for a bigger one?
No, actually not. There's like, I think there's the common understanding I hear over and over again is that we're running at 60% capacity. So, you know, expanding into L and K, no problem. Yeah. Have you ever made a tour?
No.
If you'd like to have a tour,
No.
we can take you on a tour.
Sure.
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Contact me, let
Okay.
me know, set it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marianne.
Thank you.
All right. Next, did you want to address the board? No? Okay.
I'm just learning.
Okay.
Very interested in the topic.
This is more exciting than Ed Sheehan at the Talk House.
That's right.
Yeah, it's right now.
Okay, next we have Valerie Palmieri, Lionshead Beach Association Environmental Remediation Program for Swan Pond. Valerie, are you there?
Thank you. Yes, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to be sure. I'm dialing in from bright and sunny San Diego on work. So thank you for your time. I'm going to make this quick and bring up a slide deck. While I do that, I'm going to also let you know who we have on the line. On the line, we have 3 subject matter experts. Can you see the slide deck?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, let me see if I can get it into presentation mode. Let me see here. View slideshow. Okay, so on the line, you have 3 subject matter experts. One is David Rhodes, who is our engineer behind this, and he is here for questions. 2 presenters will be Molly Graffam, as well as Frank Pacini. I don't see Molly in the line because you guys are running a little early, so is Molly there? No, I don't see her. I'm going to probably need to call Molly because we said we were going to join at 7:15, and actually it's only a couple of minutes early, so she should be here. So let me get started, and then hopefully she gets here on her section. If not, we'll have Frank go first. So really quick, the current state of the water quality of Swan Pond, I'm going to let you know where the location is. We have a 4-point plan which deals with homeowner-driven solutions, low nitrogen systems. We're focused on 50 low nitrogen systems around this pond. We've had 15 conversions in queue, about 30%, so either completed or have stated they are in process. We have also worked on changing the landscape practices with the help of Bruce Horwath, Change Hampton, having them present live to our community. The second piece is the groundwater remediation, which Molly will go through, the surface water remediation, which is number 3, and then the eco restoration. And then we'd like to open up for Q&A. Just to give you a background on this pond, we've been doing testing, and thank you very much to John Aldrich for, we met earlier in the year, so the trustees have been supporting the testing by Dr. Gobler. This pond specifically, both ponds have had experienced very dense blooms since November of 2022. So this is not a problem that's going away. To give you a sense of location, these are the 2 ponds. One is Pond Lane and one is Swan Pond. The one of interest here that we're discussing in terms of remediation is Swan Pond because of the seriousness of the toxicity in this pond. Here is the current state of Swan Pond. Here's the way it used to look, and here's how it looks today. It is actually, there's probably a more recent picture because a lot of it is dried up. Although at some of the recent storms, we have seen some, water going back into the ponds. Moving into our 4-point plan, as I said, resident awareness. So we want resident awareness and education. We have a focused groundwater nitrogen. I also wanted to explain too that we've had 2 sessions with our neighborhood, both Clearwater and Lions Head, which I've led. So we've had Tom Varley, David Rhodes, a septic tank company, South Fork Septic, as well as Melissa Winslow. Really a whole consortium of us really trying to educate the 500 residents in Clearwater and the 178 in Swan Pond. The focus on Swan Pond, as I said, is about 50 septics, and we have 15 right now that are either completed or in process. Moving on to the surface water, the storm drainage enhancements, which Frank is going to go through, and the strategic bioswales. We have 16 bioswales that we're going to discuss that are outside of the pond. And then what I do want to bring to the attention to the trustees is the Swan Pond border vegetation restoration and the removal of invasives. The total cost here is, and this is actually from the application for the CPF, the total cost is $274,000 on the bioswales, $55,000 for the wetland buffer, $45,000 for the reducing groundwater nitrogen, and there's about $30,000 for engineering. So the total cost that we are looking to get from the CPF fund is about $403,000. So if Molly is not here, is Molly present? No, I don't. Molly. Okay, so I'm going to let go first and let him. So Frank, I'd like to give you the floor.
Sure. Thanks so much. Frank Piccinini from Spadefoot Design and Construction. I'm a biologist and an environmental attorney, not necessarily in that order, depending on the context, I suppose. And I wanted to quickly go through some pretty complex material in the interest of, just expedience. I'm going to fly through this, but please, I hope this is a conversation. So, the stormwater infrastructure that's installed at Swan Pond or the upland watershed around Swan Pond is about 60 years old. It was designed in the 60s, early 60s, and from day one it was undersized. There was some convenient engineering, as I say here. So there's 2 factors that go into sizing stormwater infrastructure. How big is the land surface that drains to this area, and what is the runoff coefficient? How much stormwater is generated based on what is the land surface comprised of? So a runoff coefficient for concrete area is very high, whereas an old growth forest would be very low. So based on some of the more recent analysis of contributing area, they shorted the contributing area by about 18 acres, and they used an unusually low runoff coefficient. So just so you know, the 0.21 is the runoff coefficient that's supposed to be used now. And so what does this math mean? It means that for just a single inch storm, there's about over 273,000 gallons of stormwater that's rushing untreated into the pond. This system designed, again in the 60s, treats the pond as a catch basin. As stated in the engineering plans from 1961, the whole point of it was to, as quickly as possible, get the stormwater off the streets, quote unquote, safely into the pond, which is, with the resulting issues. And the 100-year storm, so it was undersized in the 60s. We've seen increasingly frequent and intense storm issues. So, it's not going to get any better. And you just have to look around closely at the subtle signs of the degradation of the watershed. The picture on the right, where it starts, and this is not to denigrate this particular property, but it really is a neighborhood-wide issue. You can see sediment from gouges from this person's individual's driveway, just rushing over this apron here and entering the street, entering the storm drain system, which is an overland conveyance, and ultimately ending up in the storm drain. You can see on the left picture from Isle of Wight Road. These storm drains are constantly clogged. They were thankfully recently cleaned. However, you could just see the sediment just, really at the mouth of the inlet, rather, of the storm drain. And at the bottom, the view from the pond. I mean, it's obvious. So it comes from the upland area, it goes into the storm drains, and then out into the pipe and into the pond. Next slide, please. Yeah, so there's been some discussion about why the water level is low in Swan Pond, and it's clear that sedimentation is causing the water level depth issue. So if we add all the sediment into the system, there's less water, and the water that is left heats up more quickly and evaporates more quickly. And it's not about getting stormwater more quickly into the pond to dilute the pond. I mean, this is true from a breach in Fire Island, and it's also true locally. In the context of a pond, more water in the pond is not a solution to the problem. It's only going to mask the issue. Also, what we're noticing and what we've clearly noticed is that Phragmites actually builds islands. So it is, although it's coastally associated, it's salt intolerant. And so in order to gain a competitive advantage over time, the litter falls and they go through this process called soil accretion, basically soil building, and the Phragmites gets a competitive advantage. And so, you're seeing a number of things here: sediment in the pond and Phragmites sort of decreasing the surface water depth. Next slide, please. So what is the solution? Our solution is cutting the stormwater off at the source. The system design, by the way, I should say, it's fully scalable. So you can kind of pick and choose the individual projects, or you can fund the whole redundant bulk. But the system as currently designed would save 7.4, if the stormwater for this coming year is the same as the stormwater for last year, it would save 7.4 million gallons of stormwater entering the system. And with standard multipliers, that's about 123 pounds of nitrogen, 16 pounds of phosphorus, 3,500 pounds of suspended solids, not to mention petroleum hydrocarbons. You heard the other speaker talk about pathogens, road metals, all kinds of nasty solvents that would stay on site and not end up in the pond. And this is a conservative estimate because as the native plant community that will be planted starts to develop, it'll facilitate what's called nitrogen assimilation. Basically, the nitrogen goes into the plant tissue. It also facilitates what's called the nitrogen cycle, so this denitrification process, and it appreciates over time. So the day you put built infrastructure in, it starts degrading in its efficiency, whereas natural infrastructure, it only gets stronger over time. So I have a quick video and one more quick slide. Valerie, if you can click the video. This is from a bioswale that we built in Sayville. It's a little bit jerky, I apologize, but basically we gently take the stormwater off the land, off the street rather. Right now you can't even see the bioswale because it's surrounded by the vegetation that has already knit together. But this is right after install, and you can see it just sort of holds onto the stormwater. It infiltrates it. It drains very quickly, usually an hour or two after the storm. You can stop that the video. It's sort of distracting at this point. So what you would see is that each of these bioswales that we designed and strategically located would receive the stormwater, and to the extent that there's an overflow event, it would kick it back gently down the street. And this would serve to increase the redundancy and would actually help to reinforce the existing stormwater structure. So we're not creating anything new, rather we're reinforcing what's already there. Next slide, please. Okay, and lastly, and each of these are complex subjects, but we are hoping to use the pond shoreline, and it's a particular relevance to the trustees, to do some ecological restoration. So Phragmites, I told you that it's salt intolerant or intolerant to inundation of salt water. It's also shade intolerant. And so typically, and sort of ironically, when people cut down trees and shrubs in an attempt to have a better view at the pond, they're typically treated to a view of Phragmites. So what we propose is to remove the Phragmites stems. We won't remove the roots; they'll stay in place, just so we don't cause any more water quality degradation. And we would plant native plant trees above 6 feet above the deer browse line, directly into the Phragmites stems. And so this would help in two ways: reduce the nitrogen load and some of the other water quality issues in the pond. So we'll be actually removing the stems of nitrogen. So during the growing season, when the Phragmites is growing so quickly, it pulls a lot of the nitrogen out of the water. By removing those stems, and bundling them and taking them off site, we're removing that nitrogen from the watershed, and the Phragmites will sucker back up. We'll clip those and take those off site. But in addition, and perhaps more importantly, especially in the mid to long term, these trees themselves are really nature's permeable reactive barrier, if you will. It facilitates the exact same microbial interactions that you would hope to get with a permeable reactive barrier. The plant tissue will assimilate the nitrogen and will facilitate denitrification. So basically taking this nitrogen and gas and through evapotranspiration, shoving it back into the atmosphere as N2. And of course, the wildlife co-benefits would be incredible. So that is it for my presentation. Blew through it. I'm happy to take questions.
I think the initiative that you're starting with here, I mean, the engineering, the methodology, the thought process is sound. For the East Hampton Town Trustees, the first question here is, this is a private community. These two ponds are not owned by the trustees as far as I know. I believe these are considered private property or part of the community. Question for our board is, what would our interest be here other than, yes, we would support this initiative? But are we, do we have the authority or the interest in doing anything other than emotional support?
Jim, I believe the ponds themselves are trustee property. They were formerly an arm of Hog Creek. And I have an 1850s something map that shows them connected to Hog Creek that are pretty much what's left of that arm.
Okay.
So, when we discuss the, funding or not funding of Chris Gobler's water quality testing, it was on the basis that we did own these ponds.
Well, it was also, John, as I recall, it was a one-time thing. And the hope that the trustees and the community, the town of East Hampton, the residents of the town of East Hampton would potentially a quid pro quo here of having public access to what is public property.
Can I just, I would love Valerie to speak about support from the pond owners, the adjacent to the ponds. I just mentioned for the benefit of the trustees, the upland bioswales, which will be basically on the alternative street sides, will be beautiful pollinator gardens that will only be built within the town right away. That the town already has a right of way. It's something like 25 to 50 feet, depending on which block you're talking about. But we would stay within it. And when David and I walked the property, we were very careful and thoughtful in terms. There you go. Thank you. We were thoughtful in the terms of where we would place these. We didn't really want to upset. Some of the residents have planted out to the street and have some of them have pretty elaborate plantings out onto the street. So we kind of avoided those areas. There's other real estate, and the proposed locations of the upland bioswales exist within the. There's just really lawn that's out into the street that's really not serving much benefit. In terms of the pond shoreline, the adjacent homeowners, Valerie, can you speak to support from the adjacent homeowners?
Yes, I can. So we have basically had property certifications as part of the application process. So all of the homeowners around Swan Pond are in full support of this. And not only in full support of the vegetated buffer, but also the septic commitment as well. I mean, this is a serious situation. And as far as the trustees, as I said, John, you've been very gracious in terms of this monitoring. In terms of the trustees have been very gracious in terms of this initial monitoring, which we want to continue with Dr. Gobler. And it really has brought awareness in terms of the data driving this remediation.
Yeah, I'd just like to add, the Lionhead community is here proposing a lot of different work in general, a lot of which is on town property, a lot of which is on private property, homeowners around the ponds, and some of which is in the pond, which I think, was just discussed. So ultimately, they're proposing this to the water quality fund of the Community Preservation Fund for funding, and ultimately, if this moves forward, we would have to weigh in on whatever work they're proposing in the pond.
Yeah.
Was this ever considered part of the highway system? Was it considered part of the drain highway roads?
It is town.
So it's
road.
good, the town has an interest in it then, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I was down there with Bruce Harwith. We were looking at a property down there for erosion, and like I told the board last month, it was totally covered in green algae. I think Jim corrected me, but I think we can't let these ponds die, and we should definitely support it. And this may sound like a silly question, but can we dredge one of them like Georgica and let it just clean itself and then fill it back in? Is that possibility?
So the drain and I'm sorry to jump in on that one. The drain and dredge proposition is challenging in any context, but we're pretty close to the groundwater table here. What they found is that when they do drain it, you're kind of in the muck, and when you dredge, you could bring in this big equipment. It sometimes will get mired in it, and not to mention the ongoing, the degradation of the system and just the whole process of it. Really, this is about source reduction. And if you reduce the source of the nitrogen and reduce the sediment going into the pond can heal itself over time.
So David, back to your question, or not question, but feeling that we should support this. What we're actually talking about here is using public funds to enhance basically what's a private pond because of the lack of public access.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Similar to Wayne Scott?
It's just like Wayne Scott Pond.
It's very much the same scenario as Wayne Scott, Susan.
I like Jim's idea of the quid pro quo and get a little bit of public access in return if we're gonna.
We tried, and there was no.
Right.
Hey guys, I would totally support a project, and I would support it or throw my weight financially behind something like this. But I think Francis's comments relative to the private ownership issues here pretty much stop any of that. We've had a long-going policy, and it's one of those situations where it's really hard for a private community to want their cake and eat it too here. We've heard how many residents are we talking here? 500 residents. We've got an initiative that is what on the books right now is what did that total out to?
Almost half a mil, pretty close.
So it's $400,000, of which $55,000 is improving the border around the pond. So let's talk about the pond specifically to the trustees. So the groundwater is $45K. This is in the pond. Molly is not here, and I don't know what happened. So that she's not able to present, but Molly's from the Cornell Cooperative. She did the work in Hoggs Creek, as everyone knows. So we are looking at really a groundwater remediation siting strategy to understand why there is so much nitrogen here, as well as, so this is in the pond. And this is where we need the trustee support. This is $45,000. $55,000 is the buffer, and the remainder is the bioswales, which are in public right-of-ways. So I just want to give you the.
I just like to say that, as far as I know, we're not being asked for money here.
No.
This is going before, as I said, the CPF fund for funding. So if as far as I know, we're not being asked for money. So I say, when we're talking about, the public access to the pond, that usually is tied to if we're being asked to fund something, as we had discussed with, Dr. Goldberg's testing of the pond.
So what are we being asked for?
We're not being asked for anything. When we talked about testing the pond, and we had the debate about private, public access to the pond, and would we fund it? And we wanted to fund it if it was public access, and that didn't seem to work out. And then we agreed to fund it for 1 year. The idea was that, we'll see what's going on. Now, the Lionhead community has put together a package to try to remediate the problems in the pond, is seeking outside funding to do it. They're presenting us their ideas here, just informationally. And also, if this moves forward, there are permissions we would have to give some of their work as it would exist in the pond. So this is really just an information.
This is about permitting and getting approval for the work on the pond as opposed to a financial commitment. Is that correct, John?
Really informational at this point, Susan. If it's funded, they will come back to us for permission.
But at some point.
Right, I understand that.
As they will have to go to the town for permission for the bioswale work and the town right-of-ways, and as they will have to go to their individual homeowners to, put in IA systems and work with nitrogen remediation and buffers and things like that. So it's, there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of different ownerships here.
So it's a plan and a goal.
Well, I think as presented.
To help the ponds.
I don't think you can not support this.
Mm-hmm.
On a philosophical position. I think as you get closer into these things, clearly we're going to have a more refined discussion. It does look like at some point there is going to be a financial request. My only question to the Lionhead community is, before we make that financial request, perhaps we should have some private discussion about this, to seek ways that we can conscience financially participating in this.
So in terms of financial requests, there's no financial requests of the trustees at this time. This is simply going to go through the CPF fund. And as my discussions with John, we wanted to make you aware. First, thankful and grateful that you've supported the monitoring, and it has actually been the canary in the mine to show us that we have a very gross problem here, an acute problem. We've had dead wildlife, swans, we've had a dead deer. We don't know whether the deer died, but Dr. Goldberg put that in his report, that this pond compared to other ponds in the Hamptons is off the charts in terms of the cyanobacteria level as of the measurements when we did this analysis. So I want to make everyone aware that we're not asking money from the trustees. It's really, we simply want to bring you in the loop. And also with the groundwater specifically, when we'll have to get into sediment measuring within the ponds, then we will be in the pond. So I want to make that clear as well. But this needs to be
environmentally, it's important to preserve these ponds. We do own them. I think, as Jim's pointed out, there's certainly room for much more discussion about them, but I agree with David in terms of preserving what we own. And if you have a polluted two ponds where it's dangerous for the people who live in the environment, the animals, that we need to address it as an environmental issue. So I think there's a lot more discussion to go through, but I think that the introduction to the project with what you have brought forward to us is very informative and very helpful. And I would personally like to be able to see a public access to the ponds, since we do own them. That is the one thing I would want to see happen. It hasn't happened. Apparently it's something that's not been accepted by the association. But if we're caring for the pond, it would be nice to be able to have access to it.
There's other public access in Lion's Head down to bodies of water, so I don't see why this couldn't follow suit as well.
Yeah, the town might, I think we support solving all the problems down there.
Well,
We'd be willing to give out any permits necessary.
Yeah, but I think it's a great project and they're off to a good start.
You know, I mean, this thing came up, we put the funds up to identify the problem. Now we have it, and now we can all work together cooperatively to solve it.
They have one more.
Well, we are stewards of the waterways, so if we own the ponds, I'd like to see us help the ponds remain healthy for everybody.
Something that the town might be in a community preservation purchase or something, you know. Access could possibly occur.
It's also nice to see, we've seen a lot of testing over the years, and finally we're seeing a solution as a result of the testing results.
We don't want to just identify problems, we want to solve them.
I think they have one more presentation about the IA systems around the pond. I kind of think that would be useful to hear. So we have a complete picture of what they're looking at.
What was that? What was the question? I'm sorry, I didn't get it.
I think, I was just saying, I think David Rhodes is going to present about the IA systems. I think it would be useful to continue listening to your presentation to hear about that.
Sure. So I'll let David take the floor. And so David, do you want to comment on the IA systems?
I'm mute. Yeah, sorry about that. I wasn't prepared to talk. I didn't know we were going to talk about that today. Hold on one sec.
Can I, while he's doing that, this is Vincent Sama, who's the current president of the Lionhead Beach Association. I want to get some clarification just for myself. On the one thing, I just want you to know that we appreciate the support and everything that's going on. But, you know, we did spend our own money to actually present this plan. This was not something like, we didn't go to anybody to do. We took, because we want to preserve these ponds the way they should be and protect the environment. But I'm hearing different things. I want to understand. Does the trustees assert jurisdiction over these ponds or not? I've heard two different things. I just want to make, so I understand, so I can effectively communicate to the community.
We do.
The trustees own the ponds. We don't own the land around it. There is no public access to the ponds, and it's a concern of ours.
Okay.
It's kind of difficult for me personally to support any project using public money for an area that has no public access.
Okay.
And that's, I guess, pretty much it.
That's basically it.
I wanted to say one other thing too, just to piggyback on that, is that for the CPF fund, Melissa Winslow has said that we need some type of support letter from the trustees. So as stewards of the water bodies, we need some type of support letter to attach to the application. So that is the end in mind. I see Molly Raffam has also, she ran late, but she is also here if you'd like to hear from Molly as well as David. But there were some questions on David. David, I don't know if you want to take the floor, and I think we weren't prepared to go into septics per se, but happy to put up any information you'd like.
Yeah. Hey, Valerie.
Yeah, can I share my screen?
Sure.
All right.
Valerie, to your question about a letter of support, I don't think you will have a problem making a commitment along those lines.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's the goal.
Okay, now as far as the septic systems in the just in the Swan Pond area, you can see right now that there's two systems that are currently upgraded to IA systems. There's the green there is one that has proposed, but then due to the cost of replumbing, they decide not to move forward. We have three in the yellow that are moving forward. And so the pink there are all the people that we are working on trying to get them to contribute and move forward with septic upgrades. Now this is This is the 50 people that she was talking about, that Valerie was talking about. One of the things that Dr. Gobler is talking about was getting Tom out here to help the owners, Tom Varley, to help the owners like they are over at Georgia Pond, to be an advocate for them, to help them understand where the funding comes from, how they can upgrade them, and it just explain the systems to them, and then eventually get to an engineer that would then design them and upgrade them. Do you have any other questions? I mean, that's just, I really wasn't prepared to talk, but if you have any other questions on the upgrades.
I have a question. The properties that are to the left of the pink properties, the pink properties are the ones that are being focused on right now for AI systems, correct, right?
Correct. That is correct. Yes.
Okay. So what happens to the other residents that are surrounding the pond to the left?
So we're focusing on them as well. But all of these, the ones to the left, all go down to Lane Pond, and the ones on the east side all go over to Hog Creek. So these are the ones that contribute to Swan Pond. Let me see if I can find my other exhibits.
I guess I'm asking because we're looking at both ponds in terms of restoring healthy water, correct?
That is correct. But the application that we made to the town for the grant was only for Swan Pond due to its high elevated levels right now.
I see. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll stop sharing it. If I find it, I can come back and show you. I have an exhibit that shows the entire Lionhead development and which ones have been upgraded and which ones haven't.
Yeah. Hey, David, I know there's one property over here on Bay Inlet that you're showing in the pink. I know the property was recently upgraded and possibly, I don't know what the status of the septic system is. I believe the septic was upgraded. I'm not sure that it's an AI system there.
Yeah, I can only base this on the systems that we've done and systems that have been paid for by the town rebate.
Yeah, so
there may be a couple extras in here that have gone with other engineers or architects or haven't received the town fund.
And I think that's the case on this property.
Yeah, and there probably is a couple extra, but we're going to put everybody in pink, everybody that hasn't upgraded. Valerie is pushing for them to upgrade and trying to get them to sign letters of commitment. And like I said, Dr. Gobler, if he passes his, he'll get Tom Varley, who will come over and work with people to try to get them comfortable enough to move forward.
And you guys say there's like 15 pending approvals?
Yeah, so we have 15. So we have like 3 that were done, and we have another 12 that have committed. So we have a commitment letter that we have attached to the application. So just so everyone knows.
Are they within the Swan Pond? Are they within the Swan Pond?
Yes. Yes. So all the Swan Pond, yes. So we are focused on the Swan Pond because of the seriousness of the situation. So if you look at our plan here, 50 septics are impacting Swan Pond, and we have 15, either 3 are done, there's a few in process, and there's the remainder are committed to go through the process. So that's
okay,
where we are.
I found that, let me.
Hey, Valerie, I have a question. Can you quantify like the percentage of how much the problem is coming from the septic systems, or like how much by changing those 50 septics out will fix? Is that like 50% of the problem or 25% of the problem?
Well, I'm not the environmental expert. We have Frank and also Molly on the line, but I will tell you, and also from speaking with Dr. Gobler, who I've gotten to know through this process, I mean, it's really a combination of the nitrogen and then the fertilization practices, and also because of the groundwater situation that we have, groundwater and surface water. So we believe, as a neighborhood and community, that we have to be part of the solution. So there is commitment and I found this out through this process where people are actually, committing, actually doing some of this, I want to say eco restoration on their own, committing to the low nitrogen systems, committing to best practices, working with Change Hampton and Bruce Horwath. So we really have created, and I would say to the trustees, you have 178 homes where, we're on postage stamps compared to a Georgia Capon. So in terms of the density of this population and the potential contamination, it is, we've got I call a case study here that we can actually be the role model for the Hamptons in terms of really driving change in a fast way between the low nitrogen systems, between these, I'm going to call 4-point plan. So the goal with Dr. Gobler's monitoring is to monitor before and after and really show how this multi-point plan can really make a difference, because we don't have that, I'm going to say, that ideal case study just yet.
Yeah, can I just take that for just a second too? The stormwater and the septic systems are inextricably linked too, right? So the more that there's a sheet of water moving through the environment during a rainstorm, the more nitrogen is forced out of the conventional systems and the IA systems. So by having the stormwater kind of on site, having this on-site storage at the source, that means the sheet of water that flows through the environment, or that initial pulse of water during the rainstorm, is decreased, and therefore the pulsing of the nitrogen out of the septic systems, not to mention the nitrogen from the deposition, just the atmosphere raining down nitrogen, is all decreased, slowed down, and it doesn't enter the pond as quickly. So, there's some great estimates out there on a regional level, but really these things, I think to Valerie's point, are all inextricably intertwined.
Yeah, codependent in a lot of ways. So we have Dr. Graffam on the line, and she apologizes for being late. So Molly, welcome to the call. I wanted to give her the floor for a few minutes so you guys can understand the groundwater remediation. And as I said, Dr. Graffam is also working on Hog Creek as well, so knows this neighborhood intimately. Molly?
Thanks, Valerie. Yeah, I have spoken to the Town of East Hampton trustees on the work that we've done in Hog Creek. So I know you guys are familiar with some of the work we do. So I'll just briefly let you know that we are excited to collaborate with the Lionhead Beach Association and work on Swan Pond and Pond Lane Pond here, using some of the same tools that we've been using in Hog Creek. Some of the equipment that you've seen me present on and Ron Paulson present on before. We use the Trident pour water instrument and a groundwater seepage meter, and we go through and select different stations depending on the sediment type and the shoreline topography and the shoreline characteristics. And so what you're seeing here is a map of some of the potential stations that we would do in both of these ponds. And it's really a groundwater nitrogen remediation siting strategy. So this requires your approval because we're working in the pond bottom, and we'd also like to install some water level monitoring. So I know we've done this in other water bodies as well, but we'd like to install in the pond bottom a water level sensor so we can monitor the water level over time autonomously. And then on the inland side of things, we'll probably be installing groundwater wells as part of this as well. But as far as the pond bottom goes, we'll be temporarily using our equipment, poking it into the pond bottom and collecting measurements, direct measurements that can help inform how much nitrogen loading is happening along the shorelines of these ponds. And then those direct measurements can help provide data relatively quickly to help support the effort here to, politely encourage residents to upgrade their septics where it's needed, especially along these shorelines.
Molly, do you have a timeline of when you'd like to do some of this testing work?
The timeline does depend on the funding availability. I know the Town of East Hampton is relatively quick as they're reviewing the applications and then they get those contracts out. But as soon as the funding becomes available, we can really go out and do some of this work. It's typically good to take measurements at seasonal high and seasonal low water table. So seasonal high would be in like April, and seasonal low could be at the end of summer. So not sure if the funding will quite match up with that, but we'd like to get out there as soon as possible.
Okay, so Molly, to that end, could you put together a proposal and an application specific to what you're proposing here, separate from this entire presentation that we're looking at here tonight?
Well, right now it's included in it. So in terms of just looking at it right here, here it is, reducing groundwater for $45,000.
Valerie, I'm just speaking as far as the permitting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if we're entertaining a permit that fleshes out what our goals are and what the work's going to be done, which we've done this with Molly on other projects, we can turn the permitting around so you have the permits in hand.
I gotcha.
If you're putting this through an application, whether it helps or not, you can say we have permits from
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Jim, I have the proposal to the CPF, so I can, assuming it's okay with the CPF process, and I'll check with Natural Resources about that. I can share that with the board. I can share the individual.
I mean, John, if this helps the community here in their grant application process, Valerie and John, maybe that's as helpful or even more helpful than a support letter.
I have a question that Molly, perhaps you can answer, or Valerie or someone. I'm just looking at this particular map and Swan Pond. Were they ever connected? Because they're shallow bodies of water, and I'm wondering what the impact of Swan Pond may have on the smaller pond to the left. Isn't it? I mean, maybe I'm overreaching, but wouldn't it be best to try and do the testing in both ponds so that? I guess I should start with: are they related? At one point, weren't they connected? And isn't the water from Swan Pond going to end up in the smaller pond?
So
underground, I'm looking at them thinking they might be related.
I don't know that they were ever connected. I'm not sure of the historical boundaries of the pond, but there is no sub-watershed available for each of these ponds at the moment. So we don't know exactly what the sub-watershed looks like, or what the groundwater, the groundwater that's eventually reaching these ponds. We know that it's coming from most likely the homes directly surrounding the ponds, and also from further inland, somewhat in a teardrop shape. But the modeling just wasn't done for these smaller ponds. It was done for Hog Creek, and I'm sure you guys have seen that map of the subwatershed of Hog Creek, but it just wasn't done for these smaller ponds. So we don't know exactly what that looks like, but you're right, everything is connected underground. There's not just a separate boundary. It's all connected and it is related, and that's why I think it's important to look at both of these ponds as we're citing the groundwater remediation. So we do plan to look at both of them, and if there are issues happening in one pond right now, it could be soon that it's happening in the next one.
Thank you.
And I just want to say, I think we limit ourselves to Swan Pond because we didn't want to get overwhelmed the board, but I think you're absolutely right. I think we should be doing the same thing in Pond Lane Pond, measuring that we're doing in Swan Pond. I just, because we've seen Swan Pond, Pond Lane have higher levels earlier, and now it's gotten a little better, but that's not to mean 2 months from now, it's not going to have reversed the situation. I agree with you.
No.
Yes, those are both good comments, because that's exactly it. It's just the focus of Swan Pond, because the measurements were really off the chart. So we were looking at just narrowing our focus in terms of the pond that had the most acute issue today, but it's really looking at both. And with Molly's, just to clarify, in terms of this overall strategy, we're focusing on Swan Pond immediately to really encourage those residents. So that is a Swan Pond specific. The groundwater is both ponds, and the surface water and the eco restoration is Swan Pond. We will be coming back, I would say, with Pond Lane on the next round. But initially, as I said, the more the effort's been put on Swan Pond, just because of the how toxic the pond has been of late.
So I think partly the data that we collect will help with our application for the next round if we're moving forward with Swan Pond. So the data we collect with this round in Swan Pond will help with our application.
Yes. So I want to open up the floor for any other additional questions and just put those on the table since we have everybody here.
I just had a question about the Phragmites plan. The way I heard it and the way I understand it, there's the only plantings that will take place after the Phragmites are cut are these relatively large trees. Is that correct? Is there any other native wetland planting that's proposed as part of that plan?
So
I'll let Frank jump in. Yes, Frank.
So, yeah, sorry, I jumped over you there. So it's primarily willows. They're an early successional wetland species that take well to the situation and can get very quickly above the line of the Phragmites and also the line of deer browse, which is around 6 feet. But in addition, it calls for some silver maples on the more of the upland side and groundsel bush, the baccharis that I'm sure you're all familiar with, some of that as well. And the idea being, if you take down the Phragmites and restore the native habitat comprised of this early successional wetland tree, you'll start to see the natural recruitment of wetland species that are later successional, like, red maples, and then you might start to see some summer sweet and clethra kind of move in. So, if we put in smaller plants like herbaceous species, they're going to get overrun by the Phragmites very quickly. We have to use the tree species and the baccharis because they're tough as nails and grow quickly. And can
well, Frank, if I can make a suggestion, you may want to tailor this project where you get a couple seasons of Phragmites control and focus on that, so that your efforts of cutting and that are more streamlined. Once you start adding trees and things like that, even though you're going to be adding willows that are going to be above the browse line, you're still going to probably have to put some sort of exclosure around those plants, because what you are going to have a real problem with is the buck rubs in the, coming up on the rut season. And, you may get a pleasant surprise if you do sort of a disciplined cutting here. One, you'll do the removal of the biomass. You'll be depriving the plant of being able to photosynthesize, and you may actually get a pleasant surprise in terms of natural recruitment along this shoreline. It may help you better tailor what you're proposing to put in these areas.
Yeah, so a couple things. I agree with you. Deer are a challenge. We plant throughout eastern Long Island and even on the north shore of Long Island. It's pretty hard to deal with them. The willows tend to bush out and sucker up very quickly and grow quickly above the deer browse line, especially when there's browsing pressure. So we've used them a lot in this type of situation, and so not terribly concerned because they're going to already start over 6 feet. I should note that we will be back in there over the course of 2 years doing repeated cuttings during the growing season, just to give the willows a better chance to outcompete the Phragmites. And the last point I'll make is that the willows themselves are part of the strategy. So again, the Phragmites is shade intolerant. Now that I say this, as you walk around coastal situations, you can see where the tree canopy begins. The line of Phragmites very quickly ends. And in our submission, I actually have a photo from the area. And so the idea really is to give the willows a chance to sort of establish and not get overrun by the Phragmites by doing the repeated cuttings over the course of 2 years. But then the willows themselves will kick back the Phragmites and really keep the density and, the density down and the biomass of the Phragmites down. That makes sense?
Yeah, depriving light.
That exactly.
One other thing that I'd just like to hear your thoughts on is, my understanding is that, Phragmites is not loved by most people, but my understanding is that it does absorb nutrients. And, have you considered that, the trade-off between removing the Phragmites, assuming it does absorb nutrients, and that would presumably be beneficial to the pond, and how that replacement by, whatever will succeed the Phragmites.
Yeah.
Have you considered that, I guess?
Sure. Yeah, we have, and that's a great question. So first, a point of natural history on Phragmites. There's a number of studies, and I can send the trustees if you're interested in some of the peer-reviewed literature on this. But they are, in fact, a sink on nitrogen. You're absolutely right, during the growing season. During the off season, however, they're measurable as a net source of nitrogen, believe it or not, because the stems die back and they just kind of slough over and end up in the ponds basically as winter storms move through. The other thing too, when you're talking about Phragmites relative to say like pavement or lawn, certainly it's a net sink of nitrogen. However, when you compare nitrogen to our native forested wetlands, it's not even close. It's an order of magnitude. There's so many different processes facilitated, biological feed mechanisms facilitated by restoring natural vegetation. So the willows themselves, we've heard of carbon sequestration, I'm sure. Nitrogen assimilation is the term. So basically the tissues themselves hold on to the nitrogen, and that's all year round. It's without regard to off season versus the growing season. Similarly, the root microbial ecology, the bacteria and fungi that are co-associated with the roots will really start to rip out the nitrogen, and as opposed to kind of just keeping it in place during the growing season and then having it slough off into the pond during the off season. Instead, it takes the nitrogen and turns it from, goes through the nitrogen cycle, and it goes through nitrification, then denitrification. Basically, it takes the nitrogen in the pond and vents it back into the atmosphere. So, it's a really good point that you have, but compared to native forested wetlands, Phragmites doesn't hold a candle to it.
All right, thanks. Appreciate it.
Sure.
All right, so I think that wraps it up. But I just want to say thank you very much to John and the Board of Trustees for allowing us to present to you our multi-point, multi-front plan. As stewards of the water bodies, you can see we have an acute issue here with both of these ponds, and we have an engaged community with representation from the subject matter experts as well as our board. So I'd like to get a approval letter that I could send to Melissa to attach to our application, and then also we will move forward with the approval for the permitting that Molly will be working on in terms of the groundwater remediation in the ponds.
Okay.
Is there any other items I forgot, John, or any other comments you'd like to add?
No, I think that was pretty thorough.
Does the work that Frank is doing, does that need a permit as well?
I think we typically do permit Phragmites removal and management projects because they do, to an extent, occur in the pond.
Okay.
Frank, you mean not the bioswales, if that's what you're...
Yeah, no, not the bioswale. I'm talking about the Phragmites removal plus the planting around the edge of the pond.
We already have an approval for.
Yeah, I think that is one project that we would have to permit.
Different.
As well as, I guess, others would have to permit at this point.
Okay, so it'd be Swan Pond buffer and the groundwater permit together.
Phragmite cutting.
Right.
Okay, because that includes Phragmites cutting.
Right.
Okay. And then John, we'll talk offline in terms of what that process is. I know Molly's used to it and Frank probably, but just want to make sure that as a community, we're supporting anything we need on that side. So again, I want to thank you all for your time and your effort and your care and also just being stewards of our community in terms of these water bodies that are so vital to all of us. So thank you again and have a good night.
Thank you, Val.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Bye, everyone.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
It was very thorough.
Thank you, Steve. Good night.
Move on to new business. 2023 largest clam contest, Susan.
Yay! Okay. Well, I will try to be as brief as possible, but Ben and David, my co-committee people, we are going to have a great clam chowder contest and largest clam contest. And I want to show, thank you very much, Arlene. This is our mug. And we will have 504 mugs. And this year, this is new, you can purchase the mug. No. What? David?
I apologize. No, that was.
No.
Go ahead, Susan. You're doing a great job.
We'll get you the mug. We'll get you a mug. This is the mug that we decided this year we would follow up with something new. And for $12, you can have a mug full of clam chowder. And the proceeds will go to our scholarship fund. So I'm very excited about this. That we will have them delivered, August 28th, I think. Our largest clam contest this year is on September 24th, and that is a Sunday, our traditional Sunday. It is from 12 noon through 3 p.m. We have the Lynn Blue Band coming. We have face painting by Jen Woodison for kids and clam shells to be painted. We have Mrs. Roman Bonnick soup. We have clam pies. We have a wonderful barbecue from our trustee, Tim Garneau, who last year was a great success. So this year it's going to expand a little bit. Thank you so much, Tim, for doing this. And we have lots of prizes for kids and adults for the largest clam. And we will have all the instructions at the various different, we're still in the process of getting things out, but you'll be able to pick up the instructions and a bag and go clamming the week before in Accabonac, Montauk, Napeague. Where else? My mind just went blank here. Help me out.
3 Mile.
3 Mile, thank you. And one more. Hog Creek.
Hog Creek.
Yeah. Okay. So we are moving along, as I said, and we will be this year at the Atlantic Coast Guard Station, life-saving station, which David had suggested a few months ago in the spring, and that's very exciting. A new location on Atlantic Avenue with the museum, and it will be terrific. We're working on a lot of different things as we speak. We have a couple of judges for our clam chowder, and that's going to be a surprise. We also are, as I said, moving down to the Coast Guard Station. We have a lot of loose details. What can you fill in here, Ben? And David?
Hey, Susan, hold on one second. What's being shared on the screen right now?
Oh, I don't know. What happened to our cup?
Thank you.
What happened to our cup?
That's okay.
Susan, I just want to say, Susan, so just thank you for being our fearless leader, and you're delegating all these responsibilities, and Ben and I and everybody else, we're all ready, and it's going to be exciting. So we'll keep you up to date. We have the posters. Yeah, it's going to be unbelievable. It's going to be the best one ever, hopefully.
Got a question?
Oh, yeah. Susan, have we reached out to the high school for volunteers yet?
Yes, that's in the works. That's in the works as well. If you have some volunteers that you know from your school that would like to earn some community credit, please let us know. Maybe, Ben, your children are getting a little bit older. Perhaps they would like to help us out this year. They were there last year.
They would love to.
right? And we'll have our T-shirts. And this year we put the big clam on the back, wanted. So that's back on our T-shirts for people to purchase from us. And what else? There was something else I wanted to say, and I'm forgetting because there's so many different notes I have here. But the posters are going up in our local shops. We have our posters, which I have a copy here. If I can share my screen for a moment and find it. Oh, it says I can't. Never mind. We have posters. So everybody who did not pick up their posters at the office, would you please? I don't know if Arlene, you brought them with you this evening? The extra. There you go. Okay. Our new poster. And yeah, so September 24th.
Yeah, so get those, everyone try and put those posters out. And the museum, we're putting out a bunch of like social media, and we're doing some advertising too. So we've got we're all coming together for this. So it should be a good, hopefully we'll have a good turnout, more than usual. So
every year it's growing in popularity. We have Mr. Softy coming for
How many
ice
people were there last year? I'm just getting an idea, trying to get an idea.
How many people? Arlene, do you have a number for us?
400 people?
400. Election years tend to be busier.
All right, so 300 to 400 is the amount of people.
Yeah, it was definitely more than 300 last year.
Could be more than
Closer to the quarter number.
Yeah, I think so. It might be more like 4 or 5.
You can't pull a number out of the air.
Susan, what do we ask of each trustee to get prizes?
Oh, yes. Thank you very much. Ben, you love doing the gifts. Everybody here, all of the trustees, all 9 of us, we ask that you please procure 3 gifts. They can be for adults or for children. Grade school or whatnot, elementary school, high school. And those prizes will go into a clam basket that we have ordered, a nice metal basket for you. And then, of course, we have the grand prize winner. So everybody here, 3 gifts to put into the baskets, and whether or not we can get them donated or we purchase, certainly there are lots of wonderful shops in our community, and hopefully we will select from our local people. We had a big list last year, and I think, Arlene, you gave me the list of people who had donated last year. I always send the thank you note out to people because this is our big annual singular event that the trustees do every year. So it's really, we've gotten already some lovely things. I want to say Mike's Emmagansett Seafood Shop. Thank you so much for donating your gifts. And also this year, that's where our clams will come from. We have clams on the half shell. And we have Bennett shellfish coming as usual to shuck those clams. And it's going to be a great day. And weather. We're hoping for great weather. We've always had great weather. So,
Jim, are we going to have you and John to do the annual measuring and weighing the clams this year?
I might be able to make it this year. I'm not sure.
Oh, good. Well, yes, John is going to be measuring, and we are in the midst of looking for someone else to be helping John with this. And we're hoping somebody from, maybe Melissa can join us again this year. I'm not sure. I need to find out.
And if we decide if like one person can win multiple classes, is that up for discussion still? Or we figure
No, I thought we 86 that.
Okay, so it's just wide open this year.
The planning process shouldn't take place here.
Yeah, okay. Yep. Gotcha. All right.
Committee.
Yep. Sure.
Well, Jim, if you're going to be here this year, we welcome you back. Look forward to it, and Nora and your family. All right, and that's about it for now. We're just moving along and getting things done. Thank you very much, Ben, Arlene, Allison, and David.
Thanks, Susan.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
All right, all business. Ms. Gil-Lari counts on the full moon.
The full moon was a couple of weeks ago. The tide was a high tide, higher than usual tide on that particular moon. We did have a lot of mosquitoes. There was treatment of the marsh. The new moon takes place this Wednesday. The tide is predicted to be not very high, so the county is foregoing the possibility of treatments in that cycle, as far as I understand. So we'll be looking at the next full moon, which is, I believe it's the 29th of August, and that tide is predicted to be relatively high. So they're expecting that there will be activity on the marsh, and that precedes Labor Day. So I think that's a particular interest of the county to make sure if there are mosquitoes, they know about it. And if there aren't, they know about it so they can reduce treatment. So that's it in a nutshell.
Thank you. All right. Next thing. Road reports, crooked highway road improvements. Rick Whaling is talking with the town about the possibility of the highway department absorbing part of crooked highway to do improvements. He had sent us letters earlier in the year. We never made any decisions on this. So I think we're not going to go far tonight, but I think we're going to need to start talking about those possibilities.
The stuff I was looking through mentioned the fact that Steve Lynch told him that the town is not in a position to accept anything else into the highway system because of lack of personnel.
That may be at the moment, but that we should be prepared for.
No, I mean, I'm just
that to change.
Putting it out there.
Hey guys, going back to the original discussion, I think it turned around because the town won't take any of these roads into their road system without the proper improvements. One, road width, the other is drainage installed. I think at the time the discussion was circled around the possibility of creating a, what do they call it, a road improvement district where the property owners could pay into that could accomplish the issue of drainage and paving to town specs. And I think probably rather than discuss this here, we probably should have a sit down with Steve and Rick Whaling and see exactly what's being proposed here before we try and make any decisions on it.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring it to everybody's attention.
Yeah. Okay.
This is on the burner.
Okay. Be great if we get in front of Steve and Rick together. Save a lot of time.
And wouldn't the order of things be that the highway superintendent basically accepts first and then we weigh in second? I mean,
I think they have to be willing to give it up, don't we?
You know, John, it's our property, and I think probably the biggest issue here is the viability of the proposal, and whether the town's willing to work with this.
Well, that's my point, is that the viability of the proposal is more to do with the highway department than it does with us, really, right? I mean, we just have to be willing to give it up or not give it up, or not.
The process would be that they would have to improve it to town highway specifications. We would have to give them permission to do that. But then at that point, it would be up to the town highway superintendent whether to accept them or not.
I don't think we're there yet. I think at this point, they're just gonna go through if they can with the improvements.
Yeah, I think they're gonna do some stuff.
We'd like you said, just need to be ready to approve that.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
we're ways away from.
That comes under the regular.
Ready to approve private improvements to
Correct.
Trustee Road.
Correct.
It's probably not gonna approach the level of being put into the town's highways.
It seems to me from the petition that regardless of what the town decides to do, as far as if they'll accept it into the system, these people are ready to move forward with a petition to do the work, regardless of the outcome of the ownership of the road. So
basically, if they want to do maintenance, we give permission to do it.
And if there's any easements, especially, they should be doing the maintenance as it is.
I think it looks like they're going a little further than clearing the trees and stuff. They want to put a regular highway quality road in there. the way it looks.
And that work that they would propose to do privately would also require the approval of the highway department for possible future acceptance into the highway system?
I'm unfamiliar with that portion of it, so I'm not prepared to speak on that tonight, but it definitely needs approval of the town per the town code that they're trying to do the work underneath. So they're petitioning the town for approval to allow them to do it on their own right now, which ultimately will require our approval as well.
All right, move on to administrative payment of the bills. We have East Hampton Marina, $654.95 for fuel. Seacoast Enterprises, $55.98 for supplies. Montauk Anglers Club, $1,364.01 for servicing the boat. Montauk Marine Basin, $680.76 for fuel. Optimum, $150.24. Van Dyke and Hand CPA, $720 for the accountant. Do I have a motion to pay the bills?
I make a motion to pay the bills.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Then we have the financials for March, April, May, June, and July. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to look at any of them.
I have read all of these and I have sent them back to Allison. So I think that from memory, everything was perfectly fine.
I just want to point out two things I noticed. We raised the dock fees, the mooring fees, and the kayak fees. So we're up about 35K this year, as a result of the increased fees. So that's nice. And then one of our N-class funds is up about another 30,000 as well. So,
great.
Yeah, those are good. Yeah, the account's down a little just because last year we had that good faith download from Deepwater Wind for $250,000, and so it just the numbers are a little off because we didn't get that this year. But
that's the 250.
Yeah.
Can you repeat that again, Ben? 35 are the kayak fees?
Kayak, dock, and mooring fees were up to 35,000.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I take copious notes.
So
I had a, well, I don't know if now's the time to bring up the question, but is it?
Go ahead.
I noticed that the bill for we hadn't paid for the Georgica dredging this year yet, but we did this last year. Does that bill not come in?
I believe we were paid. I'll have to check when and get back to you. They did pay the Georgia dredging.
Maybe I'm just
This
looking.
year we were due to get compensated from Deepwater on that because we didn't have a contractor bid. I believe, is Allison on here? I believe we did get paid.
Allison's not here.
Okay, so.
Johnny, just talking about the opening of the pond?
Yeah.
The traditional opening?
The sand money.
The $800.
Yeah, the sand mining was better.
There is no sand mining.
We're not doing that this year, and we've been reimbursed that because Orsted kind of gotten away at that project.
But you're talking about, you haven't seen a bill.
John, I think you're talking about seasonal
I
letting.
was looking at the June thing, and I noticed that, and as of June last year, we had paid for the opening, and as of June this year, we hadn't.
It was paid earlier.
There was a change.
That bill most likely was rendered back in April, and I would assume we paid it in April.
Or at least May.
For May.
Maybe it wasn't applied correctly. I can look at it.
Jim Freeze, or is he just being ripped?
It's like 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
No, he's blinking.
Oh.
Here it is. It's Georgia opening January to July 22, $800. January to July 23, $0.
Okay, somebody didn't enter something there, because John, we would have heard from the contractor if they hadn't been paid.
All right, we'll look into it.
Let's see if the bill was not sent.
Why'd you even think of that, John? Just not see it somewhere?
What's that? Well, I was just glancing through. Arlene gave me a copy of the up to June a few days ago. I was just glancing through it this morning. I just happened to notice that line.
Okay.
And wondered why, we hadn't paid that bill yet.
Okay, does anybody have, so the financials. Susan, you've looked at them. You want to make a
No,
motion?
financials, no. I thought you were referring to the reports, the committee reports that I review and edit. Sorry.
You're talking about minutes.
Minutes, thank you.
No, I
No
didn't.
minutes.
We don't have minutes.
Okay.
We have May, June, July.
So we have March, April, May, June, July. We're way behind.
I just looked at July.
Okay, so you want to make a motion on July?
Yeah, make a motion to approve July's financials.
Okay.
I'll second.
Yeah.
Us knowing what was done before.
I don't know. Yeah. I could look at them.
So what, we're approving July's minutes without having approved the previous?
Let's just wait.
July's financial report.
I don't know if you can just.
Let's just table it. We'll do a chunk of them next meeting. I'll make a point to.
Okay.
Okay, table. Is that 5 months?
Yeah.
Okay. Get back to the gym and give her something to do on the plane ride.
Does anybody have anything else they want to talk about?
Francis, the only thing I'd like to bring up is I circulated the invitation to a memorial service this Saturday for Mike Payne. I think a lot of the membership probably doesn't, maybe not even know who Mike Payne was. Well, Mike Payne was a member of the Nineveh community. He was instrumental in getting the community support for the Little Northwest Dredging Project. And it's a big loss. It's a really big loss, not just for the Nineveh community, but for the world.
Yeah, thanks for distributing that.
Yeah, I got the notification.
Okay. Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, thanks, Jim.
One other thing, I see there's a couple of copies of this free newspaper floating around, the Amagansett Star Review. The publisher,
From Red Hook.
yeah, no, I'm not sure what this letter is saying. It's just an introduction, I guess.
Yeah, he distributes it at the IGA in Amagansett. And I spoke with him this evening. He had called in or written an email to Allison about the turtle sightings, and he wants to add a feature about turtles. And apparently he had grown up here in the summer times and always saw lots of turtles, so he wants to write something about that. He's also offered to put our poster for the largest clam contest in for free to the paper itself. He's got some other newspapers. I have not looked up his website, but I told him I would call him back tomorrow. He wants to talk to a few people about wildlife and so forth. So I thought I would find out exactly and come in tomorrow and see the copy of the paper. If you think it's appropriate. And
I don't know, this paper was just dropped off to the office today. So, I mean, nobody's really had any chance to digest it.
It's a newspaper. I guess they can do what they want.
He's gonna put the poster in.
If he wants to put the poster in.
yeah, he wants to put the poster in. He wants to write about the turtle population and what's going on. So I have some leads for him with turtle rescue of the Hamptons and Karen Testa, and he wants to talk to Larry Penny and I guess Natural Resources. But he, I think, has a residence in Amagansett. I'm not really sure. I only talked to him very briefly. But
Okay, we don't need to go through all this. Do we want to put the poster in the paper?
Sure.
why not? It's free.
Residents.
Okay, I just,
Yeah.
all right. Anybody have anything else? Anyone want to make a motion to close?
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you,
Aye.
everybody.
Thanks.
Good night, thanks.
Thanks.